In 2008, Barack Obama was elected to the presidency. Many Americans believe that his presidency would help to bring about more social equality. Okay. Now, to deal with the economic downturn of the Great Recession, President Obama pushed for an $800 billion stimulus package, which had extended unemployment benefits, created jobs in construction, and help to aid the states, okay, state governments. President Obama also pushed for the Affordable Care Act, okay? And so the Affordable Care Act eventually became known as Obamacare, and this is going to be passed by Congress. And the Affordable Care Act helps to lower health insurance costs and it allowed millions of Americans, 16 million Americans, to get medical coverage. But President Obama and the Democrats would have difficulty passing legislation during his two terms as Congress entered into political gridlock. Okay, because basically conservative Republicans refused to participate in any bipartisan policies. Okay, the Tea Party, which developed during this time, was a movement that grew out of the Republican Party, and they helped to promote conservative values that rallied voters to the polls, and it basically helped the Republicans gain a majority in the House of Representatives, and so that's what's contributing to the political gridlock. Okay. The Obama years also witnessed an increase in deadly attacks on African Americans from law enforcement around the country. And these unpunished killings eventually would influence the rise of the Black Lives Matters movement. And so the Black Lives Matter movement basically used social media to help spread awareness of police brutality, and they called for the police to be held accountable, right? Held accountable for their actions rather than having these killings going on unpunished. Now, in the election of 2016, Donald Trump would go on to defeat Hillary Clinton, even though Hillary Clinton won the popular vote by about 3 million votes. Well, Trump had won the majority of electoral votes, so that's why he won the election. But it eventually came out that Russia had influenced the election through a social media propaganda campaign, as well as through hacking into the email server of the Democratic National Committee. The Justice Department would end up selecting Robert Mueller to be the special investigator to determine whether the Trump campaign had colluded with Russia in this interference in the election of 2016. Now, although several members of Trump's campaign, as well as his national security advisor, Michael Flynn, were put in jail for various different crimes, right, which came out through this investigation by Robert Mueller, Trump himself was not found to be guilty of collusion with Russia. Okay, although it was found that he was likely involved in trying to obstruct the investigation by Robert Mueller. Like Ronald Reagan, President Trump would go on to lower taxes for the wealthy, which helped to further the recovery of businesses after the Great Recession, although it must be noted that the recovery from the Great Recession had already made significant strides under the policies of the Obama administration. Now, Trump attempted to undo a number of different aspects of Obama's policies through executive order. Okay, and so some examples are Trump tried to, or he did, pass executive orders to deregulate the banking industry and deregulate environmental policy. But Trump and the Republicans were unsuccessful in overturning Obamacare, or the Affordable Care Act. And partly this was due to the fact that President Trump never produced a viable alternative to Obamacare. Trump also pushed for restrictions on immigration as he called for the construction of a wall to be built at the US-Mexico border. And he also tried to institute a ban on Muslim immigration, which was later found to be unconstitutional, and then a much weaker form of the Muslim ban would eventually be passed under a Supreme Court ruling. Trump himself, he never actually pushed any like comprehensive immigration policy through Congress, but he was just calling for this ban on Muslim immigration, okay, and the building of the border wall. Meanwhile, Trump's rhetoric helped to increase political divisions throughout the country, and eventually these political divisions would turn violent. In the election of 2020, President Trump was defeated by former Vice President Joe Biden. But President Trump insisted that the election was rigged, and he attempted to convince electors in several key states to vote differently from the popular vote in states that Biden had won. Okay, so he's trying to stop the election of Joe Biden, right? Trying to get electors to change their vote. Now, on January 6th, these electors' votes were going to be counted in Congress, okay? January 6th of 2021. And so on this day, January 6th, 2021, Trump was speaking to a rally of his supporters, and he was encouraging them to not allow Congress to count the electoral votes, which would have confirmed President Biden's victory, okay, or Joe Biden's victory in the election of 2016. Okay, and so Trump's giving this rally, he's speaking to his supporters, and his supporters would eventually go from this rally and they would attack the Capitol building, right, where Congress meets, and this is what they called an insurrection, right? So this is the insurrection of January 6th. Now, the insurrection was, got a lot of media coverage, and it scared a lot of Congress people who had to run away, from their offices and from meeting in Congress. But ultimately, Joe Biden would go on to become the president of the United States, and it was pretty much found that that it was not true that the election had been rigged against President Trump.